Do you remember when, in 1917, Germany sent a secret message to Mexico with a wild proposal? Invade the United States, and we'll help you win back Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. It sounds like an alternate history fiction, but it's true, and it almost changed the course of history. Or perhaps it did change the course of history. This is the story of the Zimmerman telegram, the secret plot that helped push America into World War I. By early 1917, the First World War had ground to a bloody stalemate. Millions had been killed, from the fields of Flanders in the west of Europe to the Turkish Dardanelles in the east, from the sands of Africa and the foreshores of the Pacific. Despite war raging all around them, the US remained officially neutral, even after German submarines sank American ships like the Lusitania. The Germans knew they were walking a tightrope. American industry and manpower would surely swamp the frozen front lines should the US be aggravated to the point of conflict. And the Kriegsmarine was about to restart unrestricted submarine warfare, which they knew could push American President Woodrow Wilson on US neutrality. German High Command hoped instead to keep America distracted by opening up a second front right on its own soil. German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmerman sent a coded telegram to the German ambassador in Mexico. The message was this: if America enters the war, Mexico should ally with Germany and invade the US. In return, Germany promised financial aid and help to reclaim its lost territory. The most important paragraph of the telegram read, "Für den Fall, dass dies nicht gelingen sollte, schlagen wir Mexico. We shall make war together and together make peace. We shall give general financial support, and it is understood that Mexico is to reconquer her lost territory of New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. The details are left to you for settlement." But there was a snag in the German plan, and it came from the unlikeliest of sources. Afghanistan, famous for its more modern wars, is not usually considered a vital theatre of the First World War. But it was here that a German expedition had arrived in 1916 to persuade Afghans into rebelling against the ruling British. The expedition ultimately failed in its goal and returned to friendly Ottoman territory in Turkey. But one of the spies, Wilhelm Wasmus, left his notebook containing the codes used by German intelligence. Picked up by British agents, the Germans were blissfully unaware that their secrets had been uncovered. When Zimmerman's message was relayed to the German embassy in the United States, it too was intercepted and decrypted by the British. The British knew they had captured lightning in a bottle. In a bloody stalemate on the battlefield, an open provocation like the Zimmerman telegram would help bring the United States into the war and tip the balance in the Entente's favour. However, if they passed it on to the Americans, they would admit to spying on US communications. British efforts to drag the United States into war were no secret, and such a brazen German attempt at having a neighbour launch an unprovoked attack on the US undoubtedly would raise eyebrows in Washington as to its validity. So they decided to cover their tracks, and pretended instead that the telegram had been stolen in Mexico. And then they gave the decoded message to the US, and soon newspapers across the country were running with the story. But you might be wondering, how did Mexico respond to all this? In a phrase, no way, Hohenzollern, the Germans were hoping to fan the embers of Mexican resentment going back some 70 years. The reason why this is called the Mexican Gulf and why this is New Mexico is because for several centuries Mexico encompassed a much larger slice of North America than it does today. It had lost these territories, today's Texas, New Mexico and Arizona, not to mention California, Nevada, Utah and parts of other states after the Texas Revolution of 1836 and then the Mexican-American War around a decade later. However, the Mexicans had quite a lot on their plate in 1917, not least its own bloody civil war that had been raging since 1910. Even if Mexican government forces weren't needed to quell their internal enemies, their northern neighbour was far more powerful, and with German hands tied in Europe, their guarantee of military support was no real guarantee at all. Even had they been able to defeat the Americans on the battlefield, the Texas Revolution had taught them that governing English-speaking cowboys wasn't to be sniffed at. So the Mexicans made what is in hindsight a sensible choice. But once again, it's the Germans who managed to keep digging a deeper hole for themselves. The initial American reaction was disbelief. Many thought the plan to be a hyperbolic British attempt to force the US into the war, as surely no German high official would approve such a brazenly over-the-top piece of provocation bound to fail. But then Arthur Zimmerman, the mastermind behind the plan, admitted the telegram's authenticity to an American journal. "I cannot deny it," he said. "It is true." In case that was too subtle, he also acknowledged the integrity of the telegram again in a public speech to the Reichstag, the German parliament. It's possible this was some kind of damage control, a final roll of the dice by the Germans attempting to scare the Americans into maintaining their neutrality by showing just how far the Germans were willing to go in order to keep the US out of the war. Understandably, it had the opposite effect. Combined with Germany's resumed submarine attacks on the 1st of February, the Zimmerman telegram pushed America to act. And on the 6th of April 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. The Zimmerman telegram didn't just help bring America into World War I, it showed how a single message could reshape the fate of nations. The Zimmerman telegram was simply the tip of an iceberg of lots of ships being sunk by German submarines, but it nonetheless created an important focal point at which American opinion turned firmly against the Germans. So next time someone claims that history is boring, remind them that Germany once tried to get Mexico to invade the US and failed because someone forgot their notebook in Afghanistan. Coincidentally, that's also why it's called a world war. If you like this video, check out my episode on the time that Canada invaded the US. Oh, how the tables have turned. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated for more interesting stories from the past. Thanks for watching. I have been Hilbert, and this has been The History. Muske. Hot as up. So, next time someone says that history is boring, Muske. Regelung im Einzelnen euer Hochwohlgeboren überlassen.